Always again, those of you who are interested in H.P. Lovecraft's work, which you all should be, that 90-minute or so full-length feature film documentary I'm making about him will be on the Beyond Room 313 channel sometime over the weekend or early next week. And that's the name of it, Liber Providence, the Real Necronomicon. And it will be my insight into the work of H.P. Lovecraft, particularly from an occultic point of view, without the usual bitching of chaos magicians all fighting with one another, or some Abrahamic Christian screaming about it's all demons, or even worse still, some atheist materialistic type saying, oh, none of it was true, and Lovecraft had no magic in him, as the world is completely consumed with Lovecraftianism right now. Now, I say provisionally this weekend because my ass is directly in the path of Hurricane Lorenzo, which is due to hit right above here on Friday afternoon. So that could disrupt things. Usually hurricanes around here wreck the place because there's so many individual trees within hedgerows, and they often get torn up and they smash up into utility poles and people and houses and animals. So there might be a big power outage or a big internet outage for a few days, but fingers crossed I get through it okay. Either way, I use hurricanes for magical purposes. That's an enormous amount of energy to harvest, and it's very good for summoning entities such as Pazuzu. You can actually unleash diseases upon your enemies if you're into that kind of thing. Of course, you're an Abrahamic, you sit there going, please, Jesus, save me. Now, that's another thing too. The whole thing of Jesus saving you is that, you know, this, you'll often hear people saying, well, the power of Jesus is the name of Jesus. The power of that is that I've known it's banished demons. Well, that's because Jesus is the scribe of the ultimate, well, one of the ultimate demons, Jehovah. And when you're invoking the scribe of a demon, you're also invoking the demon itself. And the reason why they all scarper out of your house when you go, Jesus, save me, is because they think the super demon Jehovah is being summoned. See, you learn things here. Now, so you didn't know that. You worship a demon anyway, and a scribe of a demon. So anyway, speaking of demons, this is very serious stuff now. Now, before all you materialistic atheist types start screaming, no, you think it's demon, all made of me. Okay. You, just because something doesn't exist in your material framework doesn't mean that it is not true. And just because I name something a demon or an entity or something like that doesn't mean I know what it is. I just know that it's an energy force that is encapsulated in forms that suits it in order to harvest energy off human beings. So let's take it at that. Now, you've heard me talk for a long time now about, I will not name the name of this one, C333. In fact, if you want to know more about this, there is a link down below to a broadcast I did that's gone down kind of like legendary in history. And it basically unleashed this entity to go after me, and I've been dealing with it ever since. Mainly it affects weak people around me, people with addiction issues, meth heads, people who have a borderline personality, and it basically infects them, and there's no hope for them. You just basically leave them. And this is a big problem for me personally, and this is one of the reasons I will not name this thing by name. Now, why is C333 so powerful and so ominous at this point? Well, firstly, let me say I'm not afraid of it. I'm wary of it in the same way I'm wary of rabies. I don't, just because rabies exists doesn't mean I live in fear of all animals. I don't, just because C333 exists doesn't mean I'm in fear of all spiritual concepts. Now, the thing is with C333 is that we're now entering the age where it has taken stewardship of the internet, mainly through social media. Now, social media is the ideal place for it. Both things such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name it. And in many ways, if there's a spiritual war going on today, it's the war between people like us who are pagans, Hindus, and animists against these entities such as C333, Pazuzu, and other ones out there that, to a lesser degree, including Jehovah, who are impacting upon the happiness and the success of the human story of evolution and development, both psychological, psychic, and physical. Now, the C333 thing is identifiable through Babel, the babbler in the abyss. You will see C333 infection is very common among someone who babbles in, say, things like smear campaigns on the internet. He did this, she did that, he did this, he did that, she did this, he did that. Babble, 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 babble. And there's no, and that's it. That's why if you see someone running a smear campaign on the internet, if you are not immediately away from this person, you are in danger of ending up the same way. You are seeing a demon, an infected individual being controlled by a demon. The same with these YouTube channels or websites that seem to make a hobby out of attacking people. They're the same way too. That's a demon-saturated lunatic who is not in control of their own faculties. And anyone who has any sense, or even an individual sense of, even if they're atheists, a sense of psychic cleanliness. You do not want to be around people who run smear campaigns, because it just is so toxic. It's so draining. Because the individual that's running the smear campaign, babble, 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 lie, 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 gaslight, 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 vendetta, 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 they are so infected that the individual that was in there doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't exist anymore. And it's been replaced by a babble, 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 a babble, 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 babble. And this is a lie, 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 gaslight, gaslight, extrapolation, extrapolation, and it just the words just go on and on and on and on, and eventually says, so anyone with sanity realizes, well, this person's talking shite. This person's like a robot on automatic, and that's exactly what they are. They're on program C333, and it's often whipped up with hysteria in people who people have think personality issues such as borderline personality, or people who have been infected by drugs such as crystal meth and heavy weed smoking, especially things like skunk, and recovered alcoholics. They're very the psychic firewall is so utterly destroyed. They're easily got into a bubble, 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 a bubble, 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 and it just goes on and on and on and on and on, never stops, never stops. And because they're feeding the entity inside them. Now, C333 didn't do very well in the years before the internet. In fact, its energy form was in decline. The chaos magicians of the 1970s and 80s really didn't have much effect with it, and we're very aware of it coming into any kind of see because chaos is kind of like a shot in the dark. It's also a danger, and I'll talk about that in a minute in a bit more detail. But the thing is, when the main subject of this video. Now, so that's it. You've got to be, the C333 is probably the most powerful entity on this planet right now, mainly because of Facebook. And that's why you have Facebook mass hysterias and smear campaigns, because these people are all infected and all feeling the demon. And they play on the human desire for titillation and jealousy, particularly. And anyone who's a bit of jealousy, and these kind of losers on the internet, that their profile picture of them is like holding a cigarette, like those types or a joint. Those types of losers, and they're very easily taken in. Now, we live in an age where the electromagnetic spectrum is widening significantly, as is genetics, and I'll talk about the genetic aspect later on. The electromagnetic spectrum has now moved beyond the concept of electrons moving through a conductive material such as a wire and electronic component and so on. And by means of quantum computing is now doing calculations off planet. And by off planet, I mean in another dimension. Now, no matter what you read in Wired magazines or Forbes or any mainstream journals, just like AI, quantum computing is not very good at the moment. It's really not, but that's what makes it dangerous. In fact, quantum computing is so bad that even to do things like, it's not even as good as what 1930s old-fashioned computer using vacuum tubes and relays such as the IBM punch card system. That was even vastly superior in 1936 to what quantum computing is now. If you look into this stuff, they even have difficulty putting the English alphabet out there and getting the letters back in the correct order. It's a leap in the dark. And what these computer scientists are discovering is quantum magic, chaos magic. That's what they're discovering. They're discovering magic. This is when I'm talking about magic as science. This is what it is. Now, the way to describe this kind of computing And also a good analogy for things like chaos magic is, imagine you have to cross a densely forested area in order to get to the safety of a log cabin. I suppose it's the 1700s, the early 1700s, and you're crossing upstate New York. You've got to get to Fort McHenry from, say, New York City, New Amsterdam. You have got to transverse an area filled with snakes, all kinds of diseases, all kinds of bacterial issues, hostile natives, hostile other forces, in order to get to Fort McHenry up by Lake George or whatever it's called. And then you get there, but on the way, it's extremely dangerous. Well, the same thing applies to this quantum computing. When you throw the calculations off into off-world realms or the dimensions, it's the calculation going there and coming back is going through hostile territory. By hostile territory, I mean the entities and the energy forces that we call demons or gods and angels, whatever, impacting upon that information on its way there and on its way back. So it's it's a leap of fate. That's ironically if you want to describe quantum computing and the most recent ends of biotech, it's a leap of fate. Let's hope, guys, something doesn't go wrong. And because these people are all atheists, they're materialist, reductionists, they don't believe that there are other energy systems or other forms of consciousness on the way you might want to hijack. The biotech people actually have a better understanding of this than the computing people. So they think it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist until, there's someone in a software development office in what you call it, Silicon Valley, taking out a machine gun and killing all his employees because a voice in his head told him that they had to be murdered. This is what will happen. Believe me, this is coming. This is where the dangers lie. Now you will see. How do you know? How do you know the C333? No, C333 is the ultimate predator in this environment because it has already attained spiritual and psychological and psychic stewardship over the unknown domain, because it has already developed into a superpower, a super demon within the internet and social media. All you have to do is look at the amount of babble and nonsense, the Greta Thunberg thing being a classic example of it. The amount of the need for emotional fixes, the need for psychological validation. This is all and then the babbling. If someone says, "I don't trust this kid seems to have a problem and his parents are using it," you will be called everything from a pedophile to a planet killer to a white supremacist. This is all C333 infection. That's what this is. This is babble, 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 babble. And what you saw with Greta Thunberg in front of the UN was babble, 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 babble. That's all you saw. And that's the babbler in the abyss. The babbler in the abyss. And this is when you notice the infection when it comes into that. Things in life are very simple. Something either is true or something either isn't true. Now, there are gray areas of sort of like modulation of effect and causality that may be between them. But ultimately, if I've gone out there and shot someone to death with a gun, it's either true that I did it or true that I didn't. It doesn't make me guilty because I have a gun, and it doesn't make me innocent because I have a gun. You understand? But the ultimate end product, the end of the process. You saw the other video I made on the feedback loop. The end of the process is either a yes or a no in terms of how the functionality of the process, beginning, end. Now, what happens in a situation like this is you have an eternal middle period. And the eternal middle period is just confusion and babble. Endless, endless babble. And that's why we never get anything done in government anymore. Everything's a mess with bigger bureaucracies than ever. Nothing seems to ever get solved, fixed. We're talking about building rockets to go to other planets. We cannot get the potholes fixed in the road, etc., etc., etc. This is babble. Babel. The process is not completed because there's no focus, because everything is a containment of a babel in between. Now, a good way to describe this would be quantum entanglement. Now, quantum entanglement, they've shown the first images of quantum entangled particles, and they look like two crescent moons, very similar to the two crescent moons you see on the High Priestess card or associated with the goddess Hecate. Now, so that explains so many things in magic. So sympathetic magic, taking someone's hair and hexing it. Blood magic, the same thing. All this kind of stuff. Love spells, sex spells. any kind of curse or anything, you're quantum coupled through quantum entanglement. And that quantum entanglement beautifully explains how magic works. Now, so basically the same idea. If you're trying to work a process in the quantum world via a a, a, a development, a calculation, or anything in our five sense reality world, it's like a seesaw, right? But as you pull the seesaw down, there could be things in the middle that will roll to you. If you push the seesaw up, things in the middle can roll back to the other side. There's so many unknowns, and this is the real problem with all this stuff. And within that gray area, within that point of flux, or should we say that wavelength of flux, you've heard me talk about the digital gin, and I've been talking about this. I'm probably the first one talking about this for years now, and now it seems to be going mainstream. And not because I'm looking for credit. I'm delighted. I'm delighted because people are finally waking up. You have quantum entanglement in everything. It's all about sucking energy. Like some moron who's given some Instagram slag, $15,000 because he has a crush on her, and then when she deletes him off Instagram, he goes mental. That's quantum. That's the same thing. He's been C333 id, and so on. Again, check out the link below. It's a very important broadcast I did a good few years back. So here we are. Now it's also in the world of biotech as well. The biotech field is the same way as well, with the development of two new chromosomes, but they didn't. That we have two new DNA strands codes. We now have the ability to create almost unlimited forms of non-biological life. So much so that these people are actually more intelligent than the computer ones. That they wrote in a Terminator code into the DNA of these new creatures they have developed. I'll put the link below that below. The video I made recently on that. So both in biotech and in quantum computing, we're in the world of the unknown. Now, if you have a combination where we have new life forms that can develop, new biological life forms that can develop outside the system of evolutionary biology, coupled with this quantum computing, well, then you have the ability to bring Lovecraftian entities into existence in real life. And this is why I believe that Lovecraft was the American pagan shaman who was creating a new generation or a new pantheon of cosmic space gods and earthly gods and other kinds of entities in order to compensate for the lack of these archetypes within the development of the space age, the electronic age, the television age, and the interplanetary age, the genetic age, the genetic science age, and so on. And this is why I think if my work is remembered for anything, I hope it's remembered for this. Now, it's about stewardship of the consciousness. So, mark my words. We're a tsunami of demons, is what I saw recently in some article talking about the potential of this. I would even go far further than a tsunami of demons. I would say the potential for the reality of so many people to be literally turned inside out. We're seeing with things like people think like Greta Thunberg is the savior of the world, a 9-year-old who's actually a 19-year-old, and they can't tell the difference because she has pigtails. 17-year-old, and they can't tell the difference because she has pigtails, and this kind of thing. Reality is breaking down for so many of the meat columns. Should you be worried about this? Absolutely not. Only if you're watching this video and going, oh, this is such bullshit. Yeah, you're fucked. Now, I'm not saying this in an evangelical way, like, ye sinners pay attention. I don't care what you do. Your life is your own business. I don't want to save you. I don't give a fuck about you. I've got my own loved ones to take care of. And then there's the other ones who will go, yes, but I will be positive. Now, I had to laugh at these new agers who were saying, positive thoughts be created a positive future. And at the same time, they're going, I love Greta Thunberg. She's my angel of death of a hopeless tomorrow. You see, this is all babble, 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 babble. This kind of thing. I see someone making a music video of me going babble, 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 babble. And yeah, that I don't care. That'd be fun, actually. Now, so here we go. Once you know, you're safe. It's as simple as that. So if back to the analogy of going upstate New York from New Amsterdam to some remote fort up in the Adirondacks, if you know the snakes there, bears there, wolves there, dangerous natives there, and you take proper precautions, and that's a combination of fighting or being friendly, then you're okay. But if you walk through the woods going, you're finished. You're doomed. And that's what the meat golems are doing. They're going they trust Facebook. They trust Instagram. They trust Twitter. And then there's a sizable proportion who you saw through the likes of 4chan, and that's why they're called racist and everything, because that's actually babble from the other side, infecting the people who are think they're intelligent and saying, you see, that's why they're shutting down all the internet channels. This is why my C333 article, I cannot save it, called are some of your I'll put the link down below. Are some of your social media friends actually demons? That is the only article in the history of Facebook that I'm aware of that cannot be posted to Facebook that isn't to do with some truly controversial thing like Nazism or white nationalism or jihadism or anything like that. That article has been singled out by the AI behind Facebook because it doesn't want the information out there. The article will be below, just like the other two things I've just mentioned. So there you go. No need to be afraid because you're aware now. It's as simple as that. But just watch the brains and the psychology of all the meat golems you know around you literally just dissolve into a mush of babble before, and then we're going to have some major massacres. And I don't mean this in a way that I'm trying to say this is a good thing. I pray, I invoke Odin, I invoke Freya and Hecate to not, and Lucifer, to not make this happen. But yeah, these people are working on the forefront of quantum computing will be the ones who will become they're the unknowing, unclean neophytes, and they will be the ones who will be attached to that because they'll be quantum entangled with the end process, and then like the seesaw analogy, something will come flying towards them. But they don't believe in this stuff. They think that everything is science, even though they're working in the world of magic. And yeah, so once you know about it, you're safe. If you start seeing people babbling on the internet running smear campaigns, just get rid of them. There's no hope for them as human beings. They're done. And you'll often see that they often just fade away and die, these types that do that, because as the entity doesn't get any success, it basically drains their life force and leaves them to rot in real time. So yeah, here comes Lorenzo. I'm ready to invoke Pazuzu if I have to or some other entity or energy force. Well, I'm not afraid of Lorenzo. I'm not living in fear of it. I see it as one more thing I can use for energy. And that, my friends, is how magic and chaos magic works. There's the unseen dangers are also the unseen opportunities. And feck 'em if they can't take